professional development program associated with a project with Otago University. Their students are using knowledge building and knowledge forum for two terms, first term and second term. So the project I was talking, this is the fifth year that we've been running it. And each year there are around 60 year 13 students from rural areas and low decile areas who come to Otago University in January for 5 days and in July for 5 days. And in between, we set up knowledge forum and knowledge building using the knowledge building approach to support their different topics of study for every year. This is our 5th year of doing that. And this group of teachers, they associate with those students. So the students came from their schools. Okay, and in January and July, the teachers will come here for some sort of PD program. Right? In January, we ran a workshop for this group of teachers on knowledge building. And Heidi, who is presenting, is a member of the group. And since January, she was very interested in using knowledge building in her class, and she's been using it. So she will be talking about how to use it. Okay, and Heidi will have 15 minutes, and then after that, we'll have 15 minutes for building on ideas. Keep it very strict for 15 minutes so that we will have 15 minutes for building on. Just let you know, you were supposed to come here to hear Professor Marlene Salamaria, but very unfortunately, she and Carl were stuck in Auckland. They arrived yesterday morning at 9:30, but they are still not here. They will be arriving, I was told, 5:15 today. But tomorrow, 9 o'clock, 9 to 10, Marlene will give her keynote. So you'll be coming again tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. You'll hear her. But unfortunately, you will not be able to hear Carl Breiter, because Carl will be talking at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. By then, you will have gone, right? You will be returning home tomorrow.
Be quiet.
Okay, sure.
Okay, Heidi, I'll just very quickly introduce. She is one of your team. She couldn't make it down because of airport planes, and she's just very quickly learned how to use Hangout. So welcome, Heidi, and the floor is yours. Yell out if you need a hand.
Oh, well, this is very different to normal presenting, obviously doing it online. And yes, sorry that I can't be there in person, but there were no flights actually available from Christchurch to Dunedin yesterday. So here we go, we'll give this a go. Right, I'll see if I can start this presentation as you showed me.
Just yell out if you need a hand, Heidi.
It's thinking about it, just a minute.
Yeah, you're coming through, or you will be. Yep, yeah, all there.
Okay, I just want to get this going. Oh, and that's in the middle. Whoops, we don't want that. Woo. There we go. I can't see what I'm showing. Can you just see the PowerPoint, or can you see me as well?
No, at the moment, Heidi, we're seeing the PowerPoint. If you look down on the bottom bar, you'll sort of see the big projection screen, which has got your PowerPoint.
Yeah, because I've started the PowerPoint, it's blocked that out. I can only see the PowerPoint. So just go on that. Let me know if anything changes.
Okay.
So today I'm just going to talk to you about my knowledge building quest that I've been on. In January, Wing presented this concept of knowledge building, and it intrigued me, and I quite liked this idea because it kind of went with how I like to teach, or how I like to try and teach. And I do agree that we need to be building students who can think and develop new ideas. And so it intrigued me, and I wanted to try this out. And I've called it a quest because a quest is something that you have to endure, and you're trying to find, and you're on a path. And so this is actually what it's been like for the last couple of terms. So just for a bit of an introduction to my situation, I'm from Motueka High School. We're a co-ed school with approximately 700 students. We are a decile 4 school, so we are in the lower category of economic wealth, I guess you can call it. And we've got year 9 to 13 students, and as you can see by the map, we're located at the top of the South Island. So we are actually quite isolated from any sort of major educational situations like any universities. The closest one is Wellington, and that's a flight or a ferry trip to get to. So our students don't have a lot of exposure to working in sort of a highly academic environment. Like when I worked in Ashburton, would go to Canterbury University quite a lot, and so they got exposed to that. And so being a lower decile school as well, we had to really think about how we're going to use the technology part of knowledge building, because obviously it's an online sort of forum situation, and as we'll talk about later, it's one of the things I actually had to overcome. A lot of the students don't have their own devices as well. So when I was starting this sort of quest, I really had to get my head around what knowledge building is, because a lot of it is very academic definitions, and I find that sort of hard to translate into what this actually means for me and my students. And so I actually, for the whole first term, I was liaising with Wing and Emily and talking to them about what it actually means and reading articles. And so I sort of did a bit of a brainstorm as I read these things to help me clarify it, because if I don't understand what it is, I can't really work with my students in that way. And this is my brainstorm about what I came up with. And it's this bit down in the corner in the sort of the pink colour that really sort of made me switch my thinking. It's that we're actually facilitating and guiding the process as a teacher. We're not teaching it as such. I hope that makes sense. And so once I kind of got my head around this, and I sort of felt like I knew what I was going to be doing in terms of the knowledge building process, I had to decide, of course, what the success of this would actually look like. And so the key things for me are that the students are actually engaged in learning in my lessons. And, you know, as teachers, especially at high school, we are judged against whether our students are achieving in their assessments, and so they have to be able to do that, obviously, from what they learn in this knowledge building process. So I am a high school science teacher, and so I'm teaching Year 10 science enrichment class, a Year 11 internal and external science class, and a Year 12 chemistry class. And so I had to decide, and I guess this is one of the biggest things as a teacher, is where can you fit things in without too much disruption. And
I'm just going to interrupt for a moment. At the moment, I think you're into slideshow viewing mode, but we're actually only seeing the same slide, which is the external science. That's it. So that makes more sense what you're talking about.
Sorry about that. Didn't know it was.
Just quickly click through what you've been talking about.
So that was my little bit there just about where we are in New Zealand. And there is my brainstorm that I did to help me clarify my knowledge building.
Yeah.
And yeah, sorry, I can't see both at once, so I just have to tell me if it disappears again.
Yeah, no, we're on that at the moment, so you're okay. Yeah, that's fine.
And so that was just my little success one, as I said. And I had to decide on the classes, and so I actually decided on my Year 11 science classes, because they're the ones that I actually have the most flexibility with. So I tried it with 3 classes actually. An internal science class, which means that all the assessments are done in class. They have no final exams, and I have 2 of those classes. And these are the students that I would define as academically challenged. They're not really into school. They don't really like science. They are doing it because they have to. And then I also thought I'd try it with my academic class, the external science class that have 3 exams at the end of the year. And that's 32 students in one class. And these kids, they're actually really sharp. They're probably one of the brightest groups of students I've taught in a long time. So the two ends of the spectrum. So I thought it would be really interesting to see how that worked. So first of all, I tried it with my external science class. We had 4 periods doing this. We just sort of did like a mini project, a mini task, I guess you can say. I had 1 period in the library and no computer access at all. And so basically we were studying the human body, and I chose the human body because it fitted in with the standards that were on the previous page, but it also, students generally know about their body and they're generally interested in it. So I hoped that would be a good start to engage them in this process. And so I talked about what knowledge building sort of is, and then they had to choose one of the Mrs. C. Green life processes and working together create posters of knowledge on this topic. And these are some of their posters. And that's basically all the information I gave them. I left it up to them to decide what to present. And some of the students did really, really in-depth work, and some of them did a bit of a lower level of work, but they actually all got the core information there that I was hoping that they would get. And then they all taught each other about these processes, and they built their knowledge as a class instead of me just standing there telling them what they needed to know. And my main project was going to be with my internal science class, and we actually spent 20 periods, so the entire topic, doing this. I could only get 1 period per week in the library, and we had no computer room access either available. Now the reason for this computer room access is that we, most of our classes are timetabled in there. I mean, they're all timetabled into the computer room, so there's no free sort of periods just to book it randomly. With these kids, I yet again chose the human body context, and we actually started by brainstorming what we knew about the human body, and then we brainstormed questions that we would have. And you know, the kids tend to ask me these questions, and I was like, no, you guys have to find these out. And I sort of explained that this is the process we'd be going through. And so once we decided on our questions, we had to sort of do a manual knowledge forum brainstorm, and I did colour coding to make it a bit easier, and the green cards were the original student questions, and these were actually really interesting because we had things like, why do we have toes? You know, real sort of simple interesting things, to some why do we feel pain, and a lot more sort of deep questions as well. And so we had these green questions from the students, and then the students walked around and wrote down what they thought answers were, and these were on the blue cards. So this was using the student knowledge that they had to build our collective knowledge as a class. And then we did get a period in the library, so we took our posters and they researched answers to see if their knowledge was correct, but also to build on that knowledge. So we started getting this bank of knowledge as a class. And so once we had done that, we let them sort of go almost in a way to work towards the content that they kind of needed to know. And so, as I say, our topic was the human body and life processes. And so this is like some of the sort of tasks that I started them off with. And because these kids aren't necessarily the most academic kids, I had to give them a little bit of direction to get started, but this is basically where we started. And for basically the rest of the topic, I didn't direct their learning. So we started with movement, and we learned about that. Well, they learned about that actually. I didn't really tell them anything. And then they got to choose the other life processes that they wanted to study. And this was actually a really interesting process for myself as a teacher and for the students, because students are very reliant on teachers. Miss, what's the answer to this? Tell me this. What am I doing? And to step back as a teacher and say, go find out yourself. or go ask another student, they're studying that topic, was actually quite difficult for these students to get their head around at first, because, as I say, they're quite reliant on me, and as a teacher to not just automatically answer these questions. That was interesting in itself. And it was actually really nice, because after the first week, the students actually stopped coming to me and they actually went to each other and were having these discussions. And one thing I remember is one student was really getting into the joints of the human body. And we were in the library, and I sat back and I was looking at the class, and there were probably 3 different groups, and they were all on task, and they were all focused. And this one girl that was really into the joints of the human body was actually teaching her group of students about it. Now, I hadn't said go to her, learn about it. I hadn't, put them into groups. We hadn't done sort of, that sort of formal way that we usually do in the classroom. They had seen her learning about that and researching it, and they automatically went to her. And that, to me, was just like a real awesome moment, actually, because they were doing it themselves, what we as teachers a lot of the time direct them to do. So they were my 2, I guess you can say, projects with the 3 classes. And the one went most of the term, and the other one was obviously a short one. So the challenges that I faced when we were doing this, we had no computer room access, which is very challenging for something that's supposed to be an online forum. But, this is a real situation in schools. We're supposed to be doing so many things online and using technology, and yet a lot of the time we don't actually have access to it. The only devices that most of my students had were either iPods, which could connect to the school Wi-Fi, or their cell phones, which is not very good for doing work on. They can do a bit of limited research, but they can't actually, type up work or share work properly. We had limited library access, and actually, as I said at the start, it took me a good term to get my head around what knowledge building is and how I could apply it to my classes without making more work for myself, because, we're all time pressured. And I wanted this to be something that could actually be applied to more than just my classroom without a lot of work. So, did I find this experience successful? The students were engaged, yes, so that's a start. Were the students learning? Because, that's what we're here for. Yes, the students did learn. And were they able to achieve in their assessment? It's still to be marked, but from what I've seen, that's looking good as well. Okay, no matter what you do, you're always going to get those students that don't engage, don't learn, and just aren't going to achieve. But from the majority of what I've seen so far, it was really successful. And it was really successful with my highly academic kids. They just went off and did it because they're interested in learning. They want to know things. They have that general inquisitive nature. Whereas in my less academic class, it was a bit of a push, but we got there and the kids actually kind of got with it, and they knew what was going on. And so I guess the question is, when we as teachers get this PD, we might roll our eyes and say, oh yeah, I'll give it a go. But the big question is always, are we actually going to use this sort of process in our classroom again? And for me, yes, definitely, I will use this process. I'd love to be able to actually do it online, so it is a bit more of the, I guess, formal knowledge building process. But I'll definitely use this process again in my class because it worked. And it actually took a lot of pressure off me as the teacher of knowing everything, of guiding everything and doing everything. With the longer projects, the kids just got on with it and they did all those things without me having to direct it. So that was my sort of little knowledge building quest there. Not sort of the formal traditional knowledge building process, but I hoped that I incorporated some of those knowledge building ideas into my project there. So thank you.
You can stop sharing the screen now,
yep.
Heidi. Very much. Because we started start a little bit later. We have to finish in about 5 minutes, but I just wonder whether perhaps some of Heidi's peers from the OUA SSA group have got any questions or comments they would like to sort of direct towards Heidi, or just general points of conversation. Come on, don't be shy. Heidi's done a really good job and quite difficult.
Do you think that it made any difference from what you were saying with how the kids were talking? It doesn't seem to be any different in how my classes are interacting anyway. So I wondered if it like doing the non-form could add different depths in how they approached it. Or?
Did you hear that?
I caught bits of it, but it was very broken up. Sorry.
Sorry.
I think because you're not directed at the microphone.
When you're talking about the students interacting and going to that girl for help, that already happens in like in standard classes as we're teaching anyway. So I was wondering, I wasn't quite sure what knowledge building added to just
conventional
good pedagogy.
Yeah. Any comments?
Well, I guess for me, the knowledge building, it just made me think about taking a step back as a teacher and not being so directive in my teaching method, I guess, in my teaching pedagogy, and letting the students really learn it themselves. I think that was sort of the most revealing for me. And, you know, it's always nice when students do talk to each other, and I find in my academic classes they do learn from each other a lot. But in the internal science class, they don't have confidence in their own knowledge. And I think by kind of releasing the reins and letting them do it and making them do it by not stepping in, they actually gained confidence in their knowledge and that they did know things and that they were correct.
Yeah, I guess just to make a bit of a backup comment to you, I would see that as that epistemic agency sort of coming to the fore. You know, it wasn't teacher controlled, it was sort of, and that does happen in non-knowledge building class. I guess as someone who's been involved in knowledge building, the thing I was thinking about is how much further you may have been able to go if you had knowledge forum and you had that access to the computer, and you could have had that sustained development of ideas, which may or may not happen at some stage in the future. But that was just a sort of thought I had, because it's more that sustained working together and working in whatever direction happens to emerge.
In many classrooms. Yeah, that's right.
You know, like Google Docs is a great application. I've got a research assignment that kids are doing collaboratively working on it together anyway, so you get that long term 11 weeks working together and building on each other's work anyway.
So many of the classrooms we talk about that I have seen, they did a lot of sharing of ideas and knowledge. In many inquiry-based learning kind of projects, they share a lot. But the objective goal of it is not to actually create or develop new ideas, new knowledge. I think there's a major difference between the online discussions that we have seen many times. I'm not saying the sharing of ideas is not important, but sharing of ideas in the knowledge building process is the first step. So just need to share ideas, obviously. But if they just stop there, so there's nothing new to be created. Right?
There is a bit of a tension, which we as science teachers, and I actually did do a level 1 biology class in a knowledge building way 2 years ago. You do look at the standards and you do look at sort of known contents and known sort of and you are hoping that collaboratively they get there. I guess in a more pure knowledge building thing, there will be questions of understanding which will take you off on tangents, and that's one of the questions we sort of face a little bit, you know, and they can be quite sophisticated theories which are being improved and improved and improved, but perhaps they don't neatly line up with NCQA's standards, unfortunately.
And that's one of the big things I struggled with was thinking about that, because a lot of the examples we had been given at OASA and other readings were classics, you know, interpret the vase paintings, and they left a lot more sort of open interpretation, whereas in the science standards and things, they are quite directed as into directly what the kids have to know. And as you say, they didn't really create any new knowledge, and it would be great to be able to take it further, but working within the confines of what the kids had to know. Yeah, and as you say, Wing, it's that sharing of ideas and that confidence that they actually know things is what I got the most sort of out of it.
So to Victor's point, it does seem like it's quite similar to a standard research project. So practically speaking, what did you do to make it more knowledge building and less just standard mathematics? Like different instructions or a different way to manage the class, or what?
My instructions were very vague. So, you know, when we usually give a standard research project, it's you need to find out this about something, you need to find that out about something, and so on and so forth. It's very prescribed. Mine was, well, with the academic class, it was right, go research what you think is relevant to teach your class about this life process. Whereas with the internal class as well, it's right, choose what you'd like to learn about. You know, work in your groups, work together and learn about this, and do you think it's enough? So I kept it quite unscripted, so hopefully their thoughts and their ideas would grow, even though they're researching knowledge that we already know. It was really about them sort of developing where it's going to go, so hopefully they can go off on a bit of that tangent and go there within the context that I needed to give them.
Any other things? We actually have got to the end of our time slot, Heidi, so I think we may have to just thank you for beaming in and offer apologies for you know, forcing this technology on you, but congratulate you for giving knowledge building a go in quite difficult sort of circumstances. So well done, Heidi.
Thank you.
I'll stop the session in a moment, but if you want to join us later on, you know, those other things, you can email me and I can bring you into some of the other sessions. So thank you.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay. Well, our next session, we have an hour. There are two workshops.